Good evening, Bev. I think it's important to mention why first Emmanuel Macron did not accept the resignation of the Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. It's because at the moment there is no majority and there is no party at the National Assembly that has a majority to govern. And the second reason is that also at the moment you don't have only two parties, but you have three parties that has a high number of seats without reaching this absolute majority you need to govern. And the third, which is probably the most important reason, is that in a couple of days, at the end of the month, the Olympics will open in Paris until end of August with the Paralympics. And Emmanuel Macron needs someone to what we call deal with or manage the current affairs. So he really needs to have a prime minister. So my analysis is that until there is better stability at the National Assembly, Emmanuel Macron will not accept any resignation from the Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal.
Yeah, so it's more for stability. But in terms of the negotiations, how do you see them playing out? We know that the left has garnered the most votes, the largest share of the vote, but they probably need the centrist parties as well.
So as I said, there is no one single party that they can get by itself the absolute majority, which is in France 289 MEPs, because we have 577 MEPs, so it's the half of that plus one. At the moment, the Nouveau Front Populaire, the NFP, which is an alliance of 9 different parties at the left, only get 178. Ensemble, which is the party of Emmanuel Macron, gets 143, and the National Rally, the extreme right one, gets 143. So you can see they can't have a majority by themselves. So they need to discuss, not with themselves because they won't agree. You know, the National Rally, the extreme right, will not agree with the extreme left, but they need to discuss with other parties. For example, the classic right that has at the moment 39 MEPs elected, to see if there's a possibility to form a coalition. At the moment, there are plenty of scenarios possible, a coalition that can go from the socialist to the right through Emmanuel Macron party. There could be also a coalition of the extreme right if they manage to convince some people from the right to join them. But no one, I would say at the moment, managed to really get the right people around the table to form this majority. And the worst case scenario would be that no majority is formed, and that's what we call an institutional crisis, because the National Assembly can't function like that.
So would that mean potentially fresh elections have to be held?
No, what that means is that, in fact, there will be a group that will be formed at the National Assembly, and Emmanuel Macron will appoint a prime minister, a new one, from this group of coalition. But the issue is when you are the new prime minister, you have to ask what we call the confidence, the trust at the National Assembly. So the MEPs give you the mandate to be able to govern. But what is the most likely to happen is that there will be a motion of censure, which means that they will say, we do not agree that you govern the country. And it means that the new government will fall, and Emmanuel Macron will need to appoint a new prime minister to form a new government until the MEPs agree that it's the right government that represents the right assembly, because the right assembly is supposed to represent the people because they are elected by the people in France.
Yeah, sounds like it could be chaotic for some time to come, really.
It could be chaotic, but there's also, and I want to remain optimistic, there's also one solution that exists in other countries in Europe, such as in Germany, or a solution that is the case at the moment at the EU Parliament, is that, in fact, for every single bill, for every single law that is discussed at the National Assembly, different groups go together and discuss. It means that you don't have, for every single law, the same majority of MEPs who vote, but for each single law, you have different groups of MEPs that try to find a negotiation, an agreement together. So it means that you have to be a certain level of maturity in terms of democracy to be able to say, we won't be able to govern all together every time, but for each single law we will discuss. That's what happens at the moment at the EU level, where you have Renew Europe, you have the Socialist, and you have the Populist Party, which is the right, that discussed every time together. Sometimes they find an agreement, 3 of them, sometimes just 2 of them, and it's enough to get the majority. And that's probably, for me, the solution that will prevent the country from falling into this institutional crisis that, in fact, every single party, maybe except the extreme, wants to happen.
Yeah, indeed. Interesting. Now, talking of, the far right was denied in these elections in the second round, but they are leading a bloc at the EU with Jordan Bardella at the helm.
Yeah, exactly. It's also, I think, important to say that even if a lot of people say the far right in France did not succeed in getting this absolute majority, they still managed to get 50% more MEPs than 2 years ago in France. So it's not a big success, but it's still a success for the far right in France, because we can see the increase from an election to another election. And Marine Le Pen, who is the daughter of the historical founder of the National Rally, Jean-Marie Le Pen, has just been elected this morning in France, the new president at the National Assembly of the National Rally Party. And at the EU level, you're right to mention that, Jordan Bardella has been elected also at the head of the Patriots for Europe, which is the extreme right party from Viktor Orban in Hungary, but also from the extreme right in Austria. He has been elected the leader of this extreme right party in Europe. So in fact, I would be a little bit cautious. If the extreme right in France did not get this absolute majority, they're still doing very, very well, both at the French and EU level.
Yeah. And so what do you think this investigation into Marine Le Pen's presidential campaign finances, do you think that's going to amount to much? Where do you think that's going to head, and what impact might that have?
So it's very difficult to comment a law decision, and because it's still like in process, I would say. The thing I would say is that she's not the only one at the moment to have some issues with the justice in France. Just 2 days ago, also, the wife of the former French President Sarkozy also got in trouble with the justice for some previous election. So I would say wait and see at the moment. It could have some impacts, but as I mentioned just this morning, despite this justice and this affair, she has just been elected the new president. So she's the one representing the far right at the National French Assembly. So I don't think it will really matter for her and for the party that she has issues with the justice at the moment.
Yeah, they find themselves in a very, very different position. Good to see you as always, Natanael. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bev.